humans. To speak in more concrete terms, stay with us, Fernando. Let's leave this question hanging and let's bring Dr. Alberto into our dialogue, who's been waiting patiently in order to reflect on this issue. Taking Fernando's words, let me ask you, in the midst of the crisis the EU is going through, this is a two-phase crisis. One, humanitarian, because of the pandemic, and the other, the economic phase. Having left the United Kingdom, this community bloc, what is the priority today for the European Union to accept the start of accession talks for new members, members that you could be random members, to foreign people passing by, and then you wave them in. But these are two strange people who coincidentally form part of the strategic Balkan Peninsula. Let me hear you. Good morning, Ray. Indeed, this time when they stuck, like my Spanish colleagues spoke before me, the situation in Europe, then suddenly an issue could come that could seem an alien to the scenario, or particularly war in the European Union, which is the pandemic of coronavirus. However, this has to do a lot with what's happening in the Balkan region, which is a strategic region south of Europe, and which connects Asia and Central Asia specifically, and is framed the Adriatic and Black Seas, where there was the former Republic of Yugoslavia. Then there's a number of different small separated republics. In the case of North Macedonia, recently named like that to distinguish it from the former Macedonia that was of a Greece territory with borders with today's North Macedonia. And on the other side, Albania, which is much more linked with the North Albania border. These are territories that in turn share a border with Kosovo, a region that belongs to Serbia, but where the influence of the Albanese population in Kosovo managed to achieve independence. This is a very complex scenario, but also a scenario which is strategic for some other powers, extra-regional powers, in particular the Russian Federation, led by President Putin, and the People's Republic of China, led by President Xi Jinping. These two nations have had a greater influence over this Balkan region. There are cultural elements, for instance, in Serbia, the North Macedonia, are culturally linked as they are Orthodox from the religious point of view, and they are linked to Russia and Albania and Kosovo with majority Muslim population, so there are cultural elements. These are all countries with small. Albania has close to 3 million inhabitants, and North Macedonia 2 million inhabitants, which is all combined makes 5 million inhabitants between the two of them. But the pandemic today, let's give you some significant elements. The presence of China in solidarity with some area in the Balkans. Chinese aid is arriving in this area, and there is presence of Chinese doctors in Serbia, for instance, like in Italy. Not only that, but also the presence of Cuban assistance, which is present in Italy, when in theory this is a strong European country and it's receiving support from countries outside Europe. From the geopolitical point of view, this represents evidently an interest, a particular interest, on one hand, by the nations who are assisting, like Russia, China, or Cuba, and on the other hand, the concern of by some European nations, in particular the French president, that in this scenario these nations show up because they are leading not only in in the combat of coronavirus, but also in the expansion, in the economic expansion, and in particular, what has attracted the attention of Xi Jinping, which is the Silk Road, in terms of the health assistance provided to this region, and this is what shows up in this juncture, in this times of coronavirus that we're living through, and the presence of these nations, extra-regional nations, is pretty significant at a strategic point, which is the Balkans. Well, Doctor, having taken into account this detailed explanation and context given to us by Dr. Adalberto, Fernando, let me ask you, in one of his latest reflections, what is the position of Emmanuel Macron, which is the one who has been leading during this time the strong opposition to admit these Balkan countries into the European Union? What is the position now of Emmanuel Macron with this with the go-ahead of the European Union to accept these two countries? Because we have some European leaders who are really pathetic. Who is Macron? Macron is just a gentleman who was fabricated and put to avoid the winning by Marine Le Pen. Then he created a party, and then in order to avoid the far right from winning in France. And Macron Macron has been facing the Yellow Vest movement, and then the rallies against the pension reform, etc. So Macron has had the greatest protest movement in Europe, and he doesn't have support, not even in his own country. And this is something absurd, because and this makes absolutely no sense. The point is that whatever Macron says is absolutely irrelevant. It's what Merkel says. He's just saving his furniture. He's just looking for a way out for the debacle in his own country. So here in Spain, what we're seeing from here is a bomb that is going to devastate everything economically, in addition to the human victims, etc. The point is that to be paralyzed for to have a country paralyzed for 2 or 3 months, it means the absolute ruin of that country. Because around the world, so it makes no sense. So in Spain, we have $200,000 million, but that would be nothing. We'll have to make much more economic layouts, because the economic deficit is gigantic. So what are these people thinking about now? In the future, to introduce Albania and Macedonia. It's laughable, because the French, they were using some arguments against Turkey not to enter the European Union, and so. So the argument was that they were Muslims, but the Albanese are also Muslim. But anyhow, not Turkey, but how come Albania can be entered? It's different interests at play. Now let's go to Dr. Adalberto. Let's make a break. Let's go to a break in our critical move, and let's continue digging deeper when we come back from the break. So remember that you can also give us your views through our strategic move on Twitter. Let's look at the screen. Today's strategic move. Why does the European Union decide to unlock now the talks with Albania and Macedonia to evaluate their entry into the European bloc? Why now? Why focusing on the Balkans? Give us your views. Participate with us. Let's go to a break and we'll come back. Despite not having great natural wealth and being the least developed part of Europe, let's say, the Balkan region has played a fundamental role throughout history. Let's see why. The Balkan Peninsula, made up of Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Northwest Turkey, and Kosovo, has a geostrategic location as a gateway to the Middle East and Africa on one side and Europe on the other. In the area, two groups can be defined in broad aspects. First, European Union member states whose economies receive funds such as Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, and Croatia. In the second group are countries that are candidates or with interest to join the regional bloc, such as Montenegro, Serbia, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Albania. In the regional context, the Balkan Peninsula has a great influence on the Turkish economy. It is a factor due to the volume of its investments. Over the last 6 years, China has been more active in the area. It has been investing in its carbon plants, steel industry, as well as infrastructure like the construction of bridges and highways, projects that set the foundations of a new influence battle that worries the European Union. In addition to this, the Balkans represent an entry point to the southern Europe, an important part of the Silk Road initiative that the Asian giant promotes as an option to develop its exports. For the period 2008-2018, the European Union accounted for 70% of the foreign direct investment in Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Albania, and Kosovo, according to data from the European Commission. Let's continue with our analysis. We're going to add to this dialogue to Juan Luis Gonzalez, accompanying us from Cadiz, foreign policy analyst. Juan Luis, I was talking to the other two guests, and we're looking at them on screen, Fernando Mondragon and Alberto Santana. We have on the telephone. So Juan Luis, welcome to our dialogue. I was reflecting with these two experts on the reasons why the European is trying to add Macedonia, North Macedonia, and Albania just now at this difficult moment in which this part of the room is going through. With the COVID-19, just to mention one element, do you agree with what I've been discussing with the other two guests, that it was not the right time, that it was not the right moment to open the door to of strange countries that were not going to contribute anything but would lead to further losses in the community bloc, which do not come to agreements? Is this part of the disagreements of the members and process? Well, evidently, I agree with that assessment. The European war is waging an internal battle, and they're trying to transmit some sort of normality sense. And the Minister of Economy of the European Union, there's an underground war due to the lack of solidarity from the rich countries of the Union and towards the least or the poorest countries in Europe to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, at a moment in which we are deciding what will be the future of Europe when the United Kingdom left the bloc, and they are analyzing the budget to see what they are going to be using the money on. So now this is a big problem to discuss the joining of these two countries, and Also, this is detrimental for them because countries like Spain and Italy, which are two top countries in the union, they are not helping them to get out of the pandemic. With the rescue package, uh, which will presuppose the cutting the welfare state with subsidies, etc. Uh, Imagine what they could do with two small countries with 2 or 3 million inhabitants. It would be even worse. So it is strange to me how these countries could jump on this kind of horse uh, if on a ship that is sinking everywhere. So what they're trying to show is a signal of normality in the midst of this complex situation, or to send a signal to Eastern European countries who want to join also the bloc, because this will be the opportunity for these two countries to enter, but and so that they can become allies in the future. But this is a time for the European Union to look inside, to determine what we're going to, because the United Kingdom was an obstacle to that project, and uh, rather than looking outside, it's a moment to look inside and think about European development. What happens is that it's a war game. That if we lose the Balkans, then the Russian and the Chinese will come and they will take them. So we don't want to waste any further time, and we have to then let's just do this little thing and not to discourage other countries, and so for them to discourage and to get from the European Union. Dr. Alberto Santana, when we put on the table an important assessment which has to do with the reasons, the motives for North Macedonia and Albania to join the bloc. What interest could they have to jump on the losing bandwagon? Evidently, there are particular narrow interests in North Macedonia and Albania to join the European Union, with the expectations that they will have full-fledged members of the European Union. But they have to remember that in reality, and the political economic practice, there is one division and the second division. Countries like Hungary and the Czech Republic or Croatia are in the second division. So they don't even not even the euro circulates in those countries, but they're using their own currency, and they are at a disadvantage vis-a-vis the economies of Western Europe. So these Balkan countries and countries like Hungary and the Czech Republic form part of this second division, to which Albania and North Macedonia Republic will also form part of, and at the same time they will press the Serb Republic, which is viewed as the central axis that still maintains cultural and politically a very close links with the Russian Federation. So this will be a key point in what has been the history of the Balkans, which has been a strategic region coveted by different powers. Evidently, Germany, that has the eyes on this region, like Russia or China, or in this global world, where this region appears as a strategic passageway with communication between Asia and Europe, and another country that has been trying to link with the European Union, and they don't have any news of that, is Turkey, which is also in this region that shares border with these Balkan countries and Greece in particular, which makes it even more complex. This situation is even more complex. But without a doubt, this is a necessary step from the migrants fleeing the wars in the Middle East, in Syria, and by the way, migrants who the European Union do not want to allow in, because they assigned this mission to Greece to stop those migrants and prevent them from crossing the border. Fernando, just 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes for you. And of course, Dr. Alberto is still with us until the end. In the minute for you, he was saying something about you were trying to reflect before going to the break. Why admitting Albania and not Turkey? What is your opinion? Because this is absolute selfishness. If Turkey entered, it would have a higher number of members of parliament and a higher say in the budget, more than Albania, which is a country in Europe. But the issue of the migrant, the issue of migrants, they do not come to any agreement. And since they do not come to any agreement, they do not follow the agreements. So, what are we talking about? This is finished. The European Union, for a long time, has been finished. It's going to exist because of the narrow interests of some countries prevail. And as well as the US influence in Europe is intended to make life impossible in Germany. And many other things as well. So it's the European disunion. And I want to base on this element to ask Juan Luis, what is happening today at the European Union? Could this be increased? Could they increase the differences between Germany and France? Yes, without a doubt, Germany has been facing France ever since many occasions in the recent history of the European Union. The most recent one was the meeting to decide which mechanism to adopt in order to overcome the pandemic from the economic standpoint of view. And it seemed always that Italy and Spain had led the fight against the pandemic vis-a-vis Holland, or the Netherlands, and Germany, which were trying to fight in a more coordinated way. So even if the fight seemed that Spain and Italy were fighting against Germany and Netherlands, and then finally they enlisted the support of 5 other countries, including France, even though with a lower profile. And I believe that the differences will indeed increase between these two large powers of the European Union. I will have to see what happens. But the situation we're living through at this moment, having been the most European-prone people, is worrisome, because we have seen arrivals from China and Russia, assistance from Cuba, when precisely countries like France and Germany, mainly, they should have stepped forward. It will be a long time before we believe that these are true partners supporting us on this. Thank you so much. Thank you also to Alberto and Fernando for participating in Critical Move in Television. Thank you so much. Until next time, let's go to our conclusions. Is it the need to incorporate new creditors to free the coffers of the bloc? Commitments to NATO, a warmongering alliance to which the highly controversial North Macedonia has just joined, campaigning to make up for, with 2 countries, the space left by the United Kingdom after Brexit, As we see, we still have to find out what motivated the very affected European Union fighting hard a battle against coronavirus to accept the start of talks with two Balkan countries, a fact that will evidently reconfigure the regional panorama with this enlargement of the bloc. Moscow already launched its alert. We'll still have to wait for Beijing's opinion. The United States seems to be more focused on last-minute actions against COVID-19 than interested in this matter beyond its borders. For today, we're closing our geopolitical board.